Observe continually that all things exist and change, and keep this thought ever with you, that nature loves nothing more than changing what things now are, for what now is in a manner, the seed of what shall be. When I read this quote in the College Board stimulus, it led me to wonder about the evolution of species and how organisms are shaped by their environment. Then I thought back to middle school when I had to write an essay about the adaptability of mushrooms, and I realized that there's no organism that better demonstrates what this quote is saying than the mushroom. It has adapted to survive in extreme conditions and has evolved into 14,000 different known species. Although recent studies estimate that this only makes up 10% of the total number of mushrooms in the world. This quote was made by Marcus Aurelius, who was Roman emperor from 161 to 180 AD. During this time, Romans were experimenting extensively with mushrooms and commonly referred to it as the food of the gods. They were not the only ones. In Eastern regions, people commonly used mushrooms as a treatment for diseases, and they used it to maintain good health. Despite these mushrooms being used for thousands of years, it's only recently that we've begun to understand what properties make them so unique and beneficial to us. Good afternoon, I'm Lore Moino, and this is the use of medicinal mushrooms as a treatment for certain diseases in humans. Mycology, or the study of mushrooms, was founded in 1737 by Pier Antonio Micheli, an Italian botanist. Even though it's only been around for about 300 years, it has led to some incredible scientific discoveries, such as penicillin, which was found in 1928 by Dr. Alexander Fleming. Penicillin is considered to be one of the greatest discoveries in modern drug medicine. Since then, the innovations have only continued. In recent studies, scientists have discovered that mushrooms have anti-hyperlipidemic, anti-diabetic, immunomodulatory, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, cytotoxic, antioxidant, anti-allergenic, and prebiotic properties, among others. Several studies have investigated medicinal mushrooms, highlighting their enormous potential in the medical sector. Scientists have proposed using mushrooms in treatments for diseases varying from bacterial infections to cancer. Knowing that we have discovered so many possible uses for mushrooms, yet aren't implementing them, has led me to ask, what needs to happen to standardize the use of medicinal mushrooms in Western medicine so they can become the first line of treatment for certain conditions? In order to answer this question, I wanted to look into different sort of studies that scientists have been conducting on mushrooms. And most of the ones I found were either in vitro or in vivo, meaning they were either conducted in a petri dish or on live animals like rats. And while these are applicable to humans, they don't accurately represent how a human would react to these treatments. So I went deeper and I looked specifically into clinical trials, which are studies conducted on humans. In an analysis of 79 clinical trials conducted in North America, I found that 16% of these trials were on the effect mushrooms have on cancer, 14% were on immunomodulatory effects, and 11% were on their nutritional value. So I decided to focus on these three since they were the most studied. First, looking at how mushrooms affect cancer, there are two main properties that can be used to treat cancer in mushrooms. The first one is lectins. Lectins suppress tumor invasion and metastasis, which is the growth of malignant cells or cancer cells. And they do this by regulating cell-to-cell interactions and cellular signaling, meaning they can identify a cancer cell and prevent it from communicating cancer to other cells. Out of 29 species of mushrooms examined in North America and Haida Gwaii, 27 species, or 93.1%, exhibited these lectins and anti-proliferative activity, which means that they prevent cancer. Another property that can prevent cancer is the beta-glucan. In a study conducted by Giuseppe Venturella on the clinical effects of MD fraction beta-glucans on stages 2 to 4 cancer by cancer type, it was shown that 68.8% of breast cancer patients, 62.5% of lung cancer patients, and 58.3% of liver cancer patients experienced a cancer regression after being treated by the mushrooms. Continuing, I want to talk about the immunomodulatory effects that mushrooms have. Like with cancer, beta-glucans can also improve the human immune system by activating innate immune cells in humans that might have been dormant, promoting lymphocyte activity or immunity against intracellular parasites, and replenishing hematopoiesis, which is the manufacturing of blood cells. It boosts the immune system and allows the human body to fight against invaders. In 2014, there was a study conducted to see whether consuming mushrooms would improve the human immune system. During the study, 52 healthy adults participated in a 4-week parallel group study in which they consumed mushrooms daily to see if it had any effect on 3 key immune functions. These immune functions being the proliferation of gamma delta T cells, which there was a 60% increase, an increase in secretory immunoglobulin A, which improves gut immunity, and a reduction of C-reactive proteins, which suggests lower inflammation, meaning that this mushroom allowed the human's immune systems to treat pathogens faster than they previously could. Finally, I want to look at the nutritional value. In a study conducted by Jose Marquez Pinto in 2020, athletes with a vitamin D deficiency were given vitamin D2, vitamin D3, or a placebo. And if you look at the graphs, you'll see that the athletes that were given the placebo saw little to no change in their vitamin D levels throughout a 12-week period, while the athletes that were given the vitamin D or vitamin D2 or vitamin D3 derived from mushrooms experienced a significant increase in their vitamin D levels, effectively treating their deficiency. So, in order for these mushrooms to become the first line of treatment in Western medicine, some solutions would be random controlled trials, which are prospective studies that measure the effectiveness of a new intervention or treatment. Because they're random, they reduce bias and provide a rigorous tool to examine cause-effect relationships between the mushroom and the effect in humans. Another solution would be research grants. These random control trials are very expensive, and in order to conduct them, you need a lot of money. So research grants provided either by government or by pharmaceutical companies could help advance these treatments. Limitations, however, include pharmaceutical company resistance. Big pharmaceutical companies want to make money, so they don't want to fund research that may provide treatments that quickly treat certain diseases. And finally, human subjects are crucial to these clinical trials. And it's very difficult to get these human patients as there is a high risk and their lives are at stake. This is my work cited. Thank you. Any questions?
I have 2 questions for you. First question, what information did you need that you weren't able to find?
I was looking for information regarding mental health, and I had a very hard time finding consistent research in that section. Oftentimes I'd find many contradicting studies, and some which said that mushrooms were beneficial and others which said they didn't really do anything.
All right, and what advice would you have for other researchers who consider this topic in the future?
I would advise to look into specifically clinical trials, because it's very easy to talk about in vitro trials and in vivo studies in animals and come to conclusions that don't actually affect people, which is something I found. I had actually used a piece of evidence that later on I found a study which contradicted that when it's applied to humans.